And I
Yep.
recommend typically when you eat, you want to eat roughly about 30, maybe 40 grams of protein. If you're trying to put on muscle mass, let's say you're weightlifting or something like that, you may even need more. But when you sit down and eat a meal, you should be looking at somewhere around 30 to 40 grams of protein in there,
Yep.
roughly around 30 grams or so of fat in there. Somewhere in that range is usually a good range. Depends, it can obviously range a little bit depending on the individual's body size or gender, their activity level. But somewhere in that range where you're getting the fat, you're getting the protein, and then, you might have a little bit of carbs and some vegetables or maybe some berries, some low glycemic fruit, but you don't want a tremendous amount. You really want to minimize the amount of starch that you're consuming throughout the day, starch and sugars, and just get them from real foods after you have your protein and your fat levels, your macros right on your protein and fat.
100%. And kind of my philosophy is anywhere between a palm to a full hand of protein. That's usually 3 to 6 ounces. Again, if you're bigger, it may go higher to 8 ounces. If
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of lifting of weights, you may be able to shift that. And then usually carbohydrate wise, I kind of say between 2 fists to 2 full hands. And I would say mostly vegetables is pretty good.
Yeah.
And if you're going to throw some starch in there, there's some theories. I tend to go later in the day because of the carb
Yeah.
backloading theory of just being more insulin sensitive later in the day. And I try to stack in the fast at night with really lower carb throughout lunch to
Yeah.
really tap into more being able to utilize ketones and fat for fuel. What's your thoughts on that?
I completely agree about that. In fact, that's what I talked about in my book, Keto Metabolic Breakthrough, when I talked about carb cycling and even getting keto adapted in the beginning is really trying to push those carbs into the later in the day. Even though a lot of people say, well, then you're going to store them as fat. It's not necessarily true because if you go low carb throughout the day, your body's actually going to burn up all your sugar stores in
Yep.
your liver and your muscles. And so now you're
Bingo.
going to have this wide open available storage for those carbs when you consume them, put it right back into the liver, right back into the muscle in the form of glycogen. So you're not just going to turn it right into fat. And I think that's a much, much better strategy. And what I've noticed is that when people go lower carb throughout the day, they have less cravings throughout the day. When
Yep.
you start your day and you eat more carbs earlier in the day, cravings go up and your overall, the amount of calories and the amount of carbs that you're going to consume throughout the day goes up. So
Yeah. A part of the big reason why exercise, especially lifting or interval training, is so beneficial is one, it makes your muscles a little bit bigger. And then
yeah,
muscles are like a sponge for glucose. And so, one, you're wringing out the sponge when you exercise. So you're burning the glucose, but then you're also hypertrophying the muscle, making it bigger. So it's like taking a big sponge and cleaning up that messy table. I
yeah,
had a patient just do this as an experiment. He tested his blood sugar after a meal. It was 140, right? mg per dl. And I tell patients, if you make a mistake with your
yeah.
carbohydrate or just too much junk after a meal, just do a 5 or 10 minute walk. Well, he did an
Mhm.
elliptical, a 10-minute kind of like interval on the elliptical, measured his blood sugar. 10 minutes later, it went from 140 to 85.
Yeah, he was
So
activating that skeletal muscle.
that's it.
Yep. And another quick tip there too is you could even just do, if you know you're going to have a higher carb meal, do 50 air squats, right? Or
Yep.
20 air squats or whatever you're able to do. Just do that. Get yourself kind of in a state where you're breathing heavy. Give yourself a few minutes to just kind of calm down, take some deep breaths, and then eat your meal. Now you've activated the GLUT4
Yep.
receptor, right? So the
On the outside
GLUT4
of the muscle.
transporter protein that actually acts like insulin to pull the sugar into the cell. And again, you got to get that sugar out of the cell because the sugar will create more oxidation and will create a process called glycation or
Yep.
browning inside of your body. So, if it's stuck in the bloodstream at a high level, like that 140, like your client there, so we want to pull that out, and we don't want to do it with a lot of insulin, right? So we want to be able to get the sugar out of the bloodstream and into the cells with the least amount of insulin production, and that's what the exercise will help with.
Yeah, and that's why I recommend, like, during the day, I have a stand desk here. So I have a treadmill over here that I can control with the remote. So I'll move my desk over there. Like yesterday on my Fitbit here, I walked 18 to 19,000 steps yesterday. So I
Yeah,
moved it over my
awesome.
treadmill. I'm working with patients. And then I have my little QB stepper over here. So I lower my desk and now I'm able to pedal. So I'll go from pedaling to
Yeah,
just standing and then doing actual walk at 3 to 4 miles per hour. I can go to 1 or 2 miles per hour if I want, if I'm really focused and I don't want to put a lot of energy out and
yeah,
put more brain energy. So it's good if you're in those work environments, start with just the QB where you just get the little pedals, put them
yeah.
under your desk and just try to get an extra 5,000 steps a day with just that alone. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I can tell, from the last time I talked to you, you actually look more muscular and trimmer as well.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's working.
thanks.